All right, welcome back. Now our GMC tweet of the night, and this is from PFF. Kenny Pickett, 92.4 PFF grade versus the Ravens, was the best in a single game by a Steelers QB since Week 13 of 2015, and that was Ben Roethlisberger, 93.4 versus the Colts. Pony, obviously I want to get to Kenny Pickett in a little bit, but I want to get your take on what's going to happen here. Some unique things. Potentially the AFC Championship will be at a neutral site. If the Ravens would win this week and they would face the Bengals in the postseason, there would be a coin flip on where that game would be.
Yeah, I think that you start by saying there's no solution here that is great. There's not one that we can come up with that makes everyone happy. But, okay, we're dealing with an unprecedented tragedy where we almost had Damar Hamlin die on the field. So, you've got to come up with alternative plans and contingency plans here, because I think the NFL made the right move today, canceling that game and making it a no contest. I do have some questions about this neutral site game thing. Where would the game get played? How do you make it actually neutral? That seems a little complicated to me. The rule book says that in the event a game were to get canceled, they would just go by win percentage, but it doesn't look like they feel like that's fair and equitable, even though it's in the NFL rules to do it that way. The Ravens would finish a half game behind the Bengals, but they would have beat them heads up. So my thing is, if that's a coin flip game like you talked about, if the Ravens were to win that coin toss and host the game, does that mean that they're now the better seed? Do they become the 3 seed and the Bengals become the 6 seed? So, I mean, it seems to me like they're making a situation more complicated than it needs to be. But I say that knowing, Richie, that, there isn't a really fair solution here, because we're talking about canceling what would have been one of the biggest games in the NFL season, Bills and Bengals, with a lot on the line.
Yeah, I mean, the way I read, going back to the Bengals-Ravens situation, the way I read it was I was assuming that the Bengals would still win the AFC North, but just that game would be played at whatever coin flip facility it lands on, the coin would land on. And then I think it would go back to who's 4 and who's 5 or whatever the situation is.
So the Ravens could host a playoff game as a 6 seed.
That's what that's the way that's the email that I got from the NFL.
I'm not disputing your knowledge here. I'm just trying to play this out. So they could theoretically host a playoff game as a 6 seed and then go on the road and play the 1 seed Kansas City. If they won that game, they would still get seeded in as the 6th seed. So I think that it's fair to involve all the owners in this. Are the players going to be consulted? I didn't read that today. It sounded like it was just going to be the AFC owners. So
it said
16
the clubs,
people.
the number one, it said right here, I'll read it to you. It said, in an effort to mitigate those inequities, NFL clubs will consider tomorrow in a special league meeting a resolution recommended by the commissioner and approved today by the competition committee, consisting of 2 elements. And it went on about the AFC Championship game being at a neutral site, and there's different scenarios depending on who won and who lost. And then the second part was about Buffalo, Cincinnati. Baltimore, Cincinnati. And if Baltimore would beat Cincinnati, they would have won twice, but have a lower winning percentage than the Bengals. I don't know what else you could do, Pony. I mean, there's really nothing. This is like your only scenario, right? It's the only situation.
Well,
you don't want to play the game.
Well, I know you don't. But the other scenario is you just go by win percentage like the rules say.
So if you go by win percentage, Pony, it's unfair to the Bills if the Bills win, correct? Because, then the Bills would have to go to Kansas City.
Yeah, they would. But they already went to Kansas City and won this year. And they'd still host probably
2 more.
2 playoff games in the wild card round, the divisional round. So, yeah, it's a little bit of, I hesitate to use the word punish in that situation. Because the flip side of that is you say, well, they're 13-3. The Chiefs are 14-3. Okay, but the Bills could have easily lost that game in Cincinnati.
Yes.
That now doesn't count. And that would have dropped them to 13-4 and actually would have had them all the way down as the 3rd seed. So I would just go by win percentage, and I wouldn't try to make an already messy situation more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, but maybe this weekend it'll figure it all out where you won't even have to use these scenarios. Let's go out to John and Carrick. How you doing, John?
Hey, guys. I kind of like Doug Whaley's solution on Wednesday on the Fan. I mean, you just play the game, resume game, and then move Week 18 to the next weekend. Get rid of that week of 2 weeks of hype between championships and Super Bowl.
Yeah, John,
it's not about the hype of that week. It's about the fact that the NFL has millions of dollars invested in this Pro Bowl thing that we all think is a farce and doesn't matter, but it clearly matters to the NFL because they changed the whole way that they do it. They moved it to Vegas. It's on ESPN and ABC. It's the first year that they're doing this. I just think it's really hard for them to blow that off. People bring up what happened after 9/11. Well, back then, they played the Pro Bowl after the Super Bowl. And you can say, well, why not just do that again? Because all of the events around the Pro Bowl are already booked up. All the hotels and stuff are reserved. So I don't think they want to move that part of it, Richie. As much as fans want it moved and it makes sense, they don't want to do that. And also, I would tell John, the caller, that from everything I've heard from guys like Adam Schefter, and Didi said this on our show tomorrow. He said this on our show yesterday. I don't think the Bills are in a hurry to go back to Cincinnati. I know that, we got encouraging news on Damar Hamlin, but I don't think they want to go back to Cincinnati and resume a game that has some bad mojo attached to it, Richie. I don't think they want to do that right now.
Yeah,
and play that game.
I definitely get that. I agree. I mean, I can't even comprehend emotionally what these guys are going through watching that and having to go back there. And look, there's 2 games where you can't really move, right, that are decided, the Pro Bowl and the Super Bowl. They're at sites, books, hotels are booked. People have plans to go
know how
there.
these events work, especially, the Super Bowl's to another level, but the Pro Bowl is actually a bigger thing than we think of it as a stupid exhibition. The NFL makes a lot of money off it, and it's their all-star game. And so they don't look at it as something that can just get canceled if need be.
Ton of sponsors too, Pony. The only thing that I was thinking of what you could do is, can't you make a whole weekend of it? I mean, you can still play the Pro Bowl, but maybe you have the AFC and the NFC Championships games the day before, and those players don't play in the Pro Bowl. You could have done that.
I know when you don't finish the Bills and Bengals game, it does mess with the fairness and equality of the season. But the other thing you got to remember is the NFL did get their money from that game. I saw a story today that was the highest rated Monday Night Football game of the year because so many people watched. Now, they were watching because they were holding their breath and praying and hoping for Damar Hamlin, but they watched, and all those commercials got aired. We were talking about games getting canceled during COVID, Richie. Just games got canceled there wasn't programming or content for 3 hours. There was Monday night. So from that perspective, I don't think the NFL felt an obligation to have to shoehorn or force that game on the air to make advertisers happy, because that game did go off and people were watching because they were hoping for good news on Damar Hamlin.
Do you think there was any talks among the NFL brass about trying to squeeze that game in somewhere? Like some scenario where you have it playing on a Wednesday and a Monday something?
I don't think there was a big, the owners are ultimately making this decision, and the commissioner, of course. But up until this morning, when Damar Hamlin's dad addressed the Bills players and kind of got their minds right, I think the Bills are somewhat up in the air about even this game against New England. Joe Burrow said last night that there were Bengals players who weren't even sure they could play this weekend. I'm guessing T. Higgins would have been one of those guys who was so distraught over what happened. So, no, I don't think there was ever any real consideration other than after the injury happened, Richie, that night. From that moment on, I don't really think there's been any real serious discussion about playing the Bills and Bengals game at a different date.
All right, we got to take a break. Back with more discussion on this topic coming up next. Stay right there.